market relevance. So growth for growth, it's just getting bigger. But growth for relevance matters, and our belief is that the industry is going to consolidate at probably a quickening pace. So as customers consolidate, vendors consolidate, peers consolidate, the relevance in the industry matters tremendously. Vendors are going to have a choice at some point. Think about today, they have a choice of 700 different distributors that can sell their product through. What if in 10 years that's 20? I don't know if it'll get there or not. What if it is? You think they're going to make some different choices, potentially? On kind of who they kind of work with and who they hunker down with to kind of drive that growth they need long term. So relevance matters tremendously for our customers as well. I think it's NECA who said they expect that 30% of contractors will be consolidated in the next 3 years. 30%. Which means you've got big contractors getting bigger, having more coverage. Our relevance to them matters a lot. If we aren't relevant, we aren't selling to them. So relevance matters tremendously. And the last one is do good. This one, really, we kind of missed this, I think, early on in some of the work we did. I think the feedback from LC is what kind of got this back on here for us. I think all of you said we got to miss. Like, where's the do good stuff here? What are we doing? And so we had a really good kind of conversation about the feedback you all gave us and continue to focus on the do good. The one thing we kind of shifted in here and put in was we've really been doing good, showing up to shape and leave the world better than we found it. So not passively, let's leave it better than we found it. Let's shape it. Like, what is the world that you want? And let's shape it. Let's take action and do something about it. So that's kind of the shift here, is moving to a little bit of an action-oriented view of doing good and what that means, the do good piece. All right, I'm going to check my notes. I've ignored them. 100%. So. All right. Let's see what we got here. So we've got kind of a brand kind of story that goes behind this, behind kind of the overarching, kind of where are we taking to who we are as a business. I'm going to read this so I don't kind of muck it up along the way. You can kind of follow along as I read this. So we believe America runs on those who build, power, and protect it. The ones who rise early, think long term, and never back down from a challenge. We are 100% employee-owned, owners of relationships, of results, and of the belief that unstoppable businesses shouldn't go it alone. We stand with those building tomorrow's communities, industries, and infrastructure. Through local commitment, national scale, and a spirit of ownership, we don't just supply materials, we fuel progress. This is more than work. This is how we move America forward together. So that's how we're thinking about, again, think about the feeling you're having right now or the reaction you have. That's why I want to hear a little feedback in the end. This should feel different than what we had previously. We're working to invoke some different emotions here, a different kind of belief system within employee owners of kind of the work we're doing and why it matters. So think about that as you kind of get through this. Let's go. Ethan, let's go. Let's go. Okay, I'm going to keep us moving. These are the 6 objectives. So we just went through kind of who we are, the values, the principles, just be enduring and stand the test of time. This gets into objectives and things that should change over time. These could change yearly if we felt compelled to do so. I don't think they would, but they could. These should change. I'm going to touch on these briefly, then I'm going to really unleash, we're going to unleash PC, let them walk me through their objectives here. So the notion here is national and local. You've heard me talk about that, but I think the unique opportunity we have to create national scale with local, I'll say local soul, like to really locally make a difference in how we serve customers, the community, the people. No one's doing that well. We have an opportunity to do that pretty well. Connect with CX, and we'll talk more about kind of what that is and what that means, but kind of in summary, this is a huge body of work that we have to transform, I think, both internally and externally, how our order management infrastructure, how it impacts our internal users and our external customers and our ability to kind of connect with them and to handle their needs. I'm going to let James open that up more deeply and kind of walk through that. Market makers, so I should know if you have traditional kind of M&A and greenfield over at national and local, market makers is the notion that as core markets, we're not simply accepting what the economy is giving us. We're about making markets. We are going out and making the opportunities that will drive the growth we need across the organization. The notion of market makers, as you go down to the bottom left, this started out as kind of a supply chain focus, and it shifted to confidence makers, kind of the fulfillment kind of side of demand gen of, frankly, you go to a local branch and ask them how they're doing, are they writing business, are they missing orders, what does it look like? And you'll hear things like, well, yeah, I'm not really writing much wireless right now because so-and-so has got this thing going on that's outperforming us. Or they don't have confidence in our ability to deliver this, or whatever it might be. This is about the notion that the network of branches, the DC work we're doing, bringing automation and optimization into supply chain, leveraging AI in supply chain, all of that, along with the work that our logistics folks do, that creates confidence and belief for our customers. So, when you get into the narrative here, I think it really starts to connect with the message we're trying to send to our logistics folks and the big impact they have in creating confidence with our customers and compelling them to choose us. Doing good, as we noted before, we want that to be an objective as well because I think as you look at our initial do good effort, we're building some foundation. We've got some momentum there now. So the doing good objective is kind of the furthering of the work we're doing, really accelerating kind of the pace of the work we're doing there. Unleashing more potential, knowing that our people are the key to our success long term, and how do we continue to pour into them to unleash their potential long term. Last thing I'll note here, technology's got kind of a thin line through here. You could put it as kind of a background to this whole thing and weaves through all of this. We cannot do any of this without technology and interconnectedness and criticality of that. And technology will be the last thing. After we get through all the 6 objectives, we'll go back to technology and focus there. Let's talk about that for a moment. Ooh, this is me. So, just on national and local, I think I did that probably well enough. I don't need to belabor that. But it is the notion that we've got big competitors in this industry who have gotten huge scale. Honestly, how many of you are concerned when Wesco is serving in the market next to you locally? For those out in the Wesco concerned yet? Wesco's the biggest. Not much. Because locally they don't get it done. They suck locally. They suck. So that's the notion though. There's nobody who has figured out how to grow with scale and keep the local intimacy, the soul, the responsiveness that once made them who they were. It seems like obvious to me we have an opportunity here. You've got smaller independents who get the local piece right, but they don't have the scale to compete in these large data centers and mega projects that are out there. Can we be the one that figures this out and gets it right? That's the opportunity. Here's where traditional M&A fits in, and rounding out our footprint. We need to get more aggressive with greenfield growth, we believe. We don't think M&A is going to get us all the way there with the coverage, the national coverage that we need. So greenfield fits into this. I think some of the op model work fits in here as well. How do we work with that both kind of the strategic kind of sales initiative and also the local effort? So you think about the work we're doing, Dave Muddle's team with the mega projects, the data centers that are out there. How do we also make sure the small and mid-sized contractors taken care of in the local market? That's the balance we're trying to achieve with national and local here. Does that make sense? This is the narrative that goes around. Once you read this, I'll get my voice just a break for a moment. This is kind of the narrative around national and local. I'll let you consume that for a minute. National strength, local trust, expansion with a clear focus on kind of that local customer commitment, local relationship, service. You're going to see in a couple of places today this notion that probably one size doesn't all. We know we need to customize that last mile of the journey. But to do that, there's things they have to remove as far as customization, which they have to get more standardized. So we can customize what really matters for a customer. this national and local piece. On the bottom, we help build America, and we do it the Border States way. Stay connected to our communities, invested in our customers, and committed to delivering value that lasts. Okay? All right, James, you saved me here. Oh yeah, we do. James will walk us through the connected CS, what that means, what it looks like going forward. So, all right. There's a mic up there. You want to do the handheld or?
I think I can do it from here. Does that work? Yeah. All right. So I'm going to talk about connected customer experience, and I would point to the word connected. That's the important word here. So think about it from two perspectives. So in one perspective, it really is about alignment. And when we talk about customer centricity, to me, there's an opportunity to connect everybody in this organization into the work that they do and how it ultimately affects the customer. And we've talked a lot about that, really driving that mindset of understanding what's the work that I do, how does that ultimately affect the customer, and how can I impact that in a positive way. So that's the alignment piece. Second piece is around technology. So if we talk about technology, and maybe from you guys, do you guys see the change that's occurring with the customer experience? I mean, we see it in our personal lives, right? I mean, how much has that changed over the last 10 years? And where's it going to be in the next 10 years? So if you think about it from a technology standpoint, there's a lot of initiatives there that we talk about. It's really about how do we create a connected customer experience. And where that starts with is really connecting the inputs and the data from the vendor all the way to the customer. And then once you have that information, how do you start to anticipate customer problems, potentially awareness, things that you can bring forward to them to kind of avoid a situation with the customer? So it's really about building that roadmap of what is all the information that we have and how do we use it in a way to create the best experience possible for that customer. I'm going to walk through just a couple of these initiatives just to give you a context. So the first one is really about the integration between the vendors and our customers. And if we think about, again, going back to our personal lives and the experience we have as customers, very rarely do you have an interaction digitally where there's not a lot that platform that you're on doesn't already know about you. I mean, they have signals and things and information about you, and then they shape that experience based off that information. And they ultimately are trying to help you or assist you make that final decision. And that's very similar to where we're going. So having that customer and that vendor integration, and then the next level becomes kind of about the order management piece. So can we see an order and anticipate that there's going to be a problem and head that problem off before versus waiting for the customer to call us to tell us, hey, we've got a problem. And so being proactive and really being able to manage that transaction from the point we get it and to the point that we deliver so we can execute and make sure that we deliver kind of an excellent experience for the customer. And this ties into the where's my stuff. We've been talking about where's my stuff. You can't do where's my stuff unless you have the integration with the vendors. Because we're a middle person. We're a distributor. So we can only see at the point in time where we start and where we end. But we know that a lot of that is even before we get it, right? It's on the vendor side. So how do we create an integration to the vendor where we can start to see what is the production schedules? How do we know is 4 weeks lead time the right lead time? Where is that changing? And when it changes, can we get an early signal to then say, okay, now we either need to make the customer aware or we need to come up with a different contingency plan. And then business process automation. And there's a little bit of automation in both of mine in terms of just where the world is going. And all of the talk about AI, and AI, whether we like it or not, is going to have significant impact on the way we work. And so, what is that going to mean for us? And how do we change the way we work to anticipate that? We all know the demographics, we know the challenges we're going to have around hiring good people. And so we're going to continue to grow. Where are we going to find those people? I just think we're going to work differently. I can't tell you exactly what that is. So really being able to step into that AI space and understand it and start to adapt the way we work. That's the technology. So those are the two main components when we talk about that connected customer experience. I'm gonna. Yeah. this is the narrative we created. And I'm gonna let you guys read it, I'm not gonna read it for you. I really want you to, the part that I really wanna focus in on that I like a lot is this connected in purpose, connected in action, connected for the customer. That to me is really kind of a key piece of the messaging here, and hopefully that resonates with people when you start to think about this. That's it. All right, I'm handing off to.
Yeah, I'm gonna let him get a moment to kind of consume this. There's some good stuff in here. Thank you, James, for walking through that. And maybe as you do, maybe a little notion of the connected CX name. So some of this gets into how do you choose things that will resonate with people? We talked about this whole kind of bucket of work that James just described, and we were struggling to articulate, like, how do you simply define what this is in a way that an employee owners connect with it and go, oh, that's what you're talking about. The reality is this is a collection of work that has been ongoing for, I think, some time in some cases. And we haven't gotten across the finish line to kind of say this is what it really comes together and looks like. So we began to pivot to the notion of, do we think about how we brand something here, and then begin to bring people along a journey to say, this is what that brand is going to encompass. We're going to deliver this in that brand within the industry, and it becomes kind of known as that thing. Whether it's the internal efficiency we're building that allows order writers to really leverage their expertise to create value for the customer, whether it's the integration with customers that allows, a Mortensen to punch out easily, and seamlessly, we can move quickly with their needs, whether it's the integration with the vendors and having the ability, to connect in a way that allows us to actually say, where's my stuff? By the way, you can go on Amazon today and you know exactly where your stuff is at, right? It's why 14 boxes show up at my house every single day, because my wife, my kids, me, we know what it looks like, we know what's going to show up. So the idea here, this collection of systems begins to organize in a way that we've not seen in the industry. That's the notion here. So we begin to talk about branding it in some way that it becomes kind of the thing people begin to know what it means because of how we are communicating and kind of driving that outwardly.
You just triggered something for me, because I was actually having a conversation with somebody here the last day, and talking about, if you think about, I've been around for 30 years, and I think about the way we did work, like distribution work 30 years ago, and the complexity that we have today. And it is dramatically different over the last 30 years. And it is complex, right? So you have all these functions and departments that are working independently to the thing that they do. And then our biggest challenge becomes when there's a breakdown in the next handoff, because it gets handed off so many times. And so it kind of goes back to that connected work. And so it's, now we're dependent upon people having the awareness that, okay, this is changing, so I need to give somebody a heads up. How do you do that in a digital way where that awareness exists? It's either triggered automatically and gives somebody a notification that says, hey, this happened over here. Because it did, this might have an impact on the way you do your job. And usually the breakdown, when you really break down a problem and start to look at it, it's more than likely it's not the quality of the person, it's not the quality of the work, and sometimes it can be. For the most part, it's the breakdown and the handoff somewhere. And the unknown of what that impact is going to be. And we're just really dependent upon those individuals doing that work and understanding how that's going to impact Tony. And so therefore now I've got to make sure that give Tony a heads up and let him be aware of it so that that order or that transaction doesn't break down. And so that connected piece is really about building this ecosystem, if you want to call it, where we have that automatic notification and that proactive awareness so that we can head off the problem. Because at the end of the day, if we can do that, it doesn't matter how we got there. Did we execute what the customer expected? And if we did that, we got a good chance of having created a pretty good experience. So that's why I really like that connected work. I know it doesn't have the same pop maybe as some of those others, but I think it does truly represent what we're trying to get accomplished.
Thank you, James. Appreciate it. please, John?
I will. So market makers, right, that's simple term. I'll tell the story. It's 2 years ago, I believe. Steve Rockwell, Automation Fair. We were sitting down for me for the first time with a senior exec at Rockwell, and he explains to us. He looks at both of us. He said, "You guys are market makers." And Steve and I go, "Oh, that sounds pretty good." And then he explained what he meant. So if you understand Rockwell, Rockwell has the most stringent kind of APR relationships in the market. Of all the gear vendors we deal with, Rockwell is very tight, right? There's a specific APR holder in every market. And Don went on to lament, we don't have enough market makers. In other words, we don't have enough people, enough distributor partners like border states who make markets. He said, what we have too many of are market maintainers, market managers. Servers, market servers. So to take that further, what he meant by that, when you're in Rockwell is an extremely strong brand name in the industrial market space, right? You don't live in the industrial automation world and not know quite a lot about Rockwell. You don't live in that world and even envy Rockwell. If you compete with Rockwell, you envy Rockwell. So what he was telling us, those maintainers essentially wait for the opportunity to come to them. They know they own the APR. They're going to get the sale at the end of the day, so they can take a very passive approach. And it's very frustrating to Rockwell. So I think it's perfect for us. And that's a vendor perspective. But Rockwell's products deliver value to customers. So from a customer's perspective, the same thing is true. If you're a market maker, you're actively engaged, you're not passive. You're actively engaged, you're actively listening, you're observing what the customer's doing, the business they're in. And you are solutioning. You are exposing opportunities to help those customers solve their problem. So this is what we want. So we need more people in the marketplace like Don Shoemaker, although it's very flattering to hear from him, who believe we are market makers. So we have to define what that means to be a market maker. So we think about our core market. We're working on a strategic plan refresh. I think for some it's going to be a redo almost. So in our core markets, what do we need to do? How do we need to set ourselves up for success in the future? And the markets, each of the core markets, changes are coming extremely rapidly. The advent of AI, the data center activity out there, it's at a scale we've never seen before. And we're enjoying quite a lot of that. But how do we stay ahead of this? How do we kind of dismiss this idea that we can be passive and the sales volume will simply come to us like Rockwell's unfortunate market maintainers. So we have big bets. We're working on those. Some of them involve M&A, but certain types of M&A that will help us integrate vertically and deliver more value to our customers. Some of them in the strategy realm, Jeff, you're working on a number. These are all market-making activities that will require investment and might require us to radically change our approach within any one of the 3 given core markets. And we need to be thinking that way to stay ahead. Demand is changing. Alliance offerings, that may look boring, but we are really exceptional in the utility alliance space. But what we don't do is we don't take those practices and apply them in the other core markets. We've got a massive opportunity to do that. There are industrial customers who are looking for those sorts of relationships, that depth of relationship. There are contracting customers looking for the same thing from us. We have to develop that. We have to spread that across our core markets. Strategic and branch services, Cedric. Here we were thinking about, and you said it well, I can't remember when, but and I think you continue to talk about, there are services that it should be sort of a local domain of the branch. The branch can react and respond, they can see a problem, they can develop a program, offer it to a customer, and hopefully sell it for a price, and execute a great service. And they can do that without a lot of help from this office, from our departments. There are strategic services, however, on the other hand, that really do need to be managed, that require investment in assets and resources. We've got to polish up our marketing approach. We've got to be proactive about getting the message out there. So that's the distinguishing characteristic there, and we would all recognize, I think, that we have an opportunity to do a much better job in that space. Our customers need things from us. They need activity. They're short labor, they're short time, and they need our help. They're asking for our help. We've got to figure this out. We've got to crack this nut. Vendor relationships and rationalization. We talked about relevance. That's the key driver here, I think. Jason, you said it. I agree with replacing that word. Growth for the sake of growth isn't great. I don't think we want to be Lesco, Rexdale, or Sunpark, or Graybar for that matter. There are things we might admire about them. We want to put our unique stamp on who we are. And one wonderful way to do that, one really worthy way is to develop those vendor relationships. We want all of our vendors, not just Rockwell, to see us as market makers, not maintainers. And then finally, market adjacencies. Here, we're talking about all the other things, the other products and services. We regard ourselves primarily as electrical, although, thank you, Jeff, we're getting into natural gas. We're developing in PVF, but there's a world of product opportunities for us, service opportunities we could acquire our way into. So really rounding ourselves out and offering more of a total solution for many of our customers. I will tell you that if we don't do this, there's one specific core market we're going to pay a heavy price, and it's the industrial market. I believe we have to figure out integrated supply, formally, fully, and completely. We're a good ways away from that today, and we've got to take that on. That also appears as a big bet, by the way, for us. So we want all this to be a maker. We want to be valued. We want to be known as action-oriented, not passive, both to our vendors, our vendor partners, and our customers. We want to make our customers better, help our vendors, play our role adequately, excellently for our vendors. We want to be that in the marketplace. So I'll let you read through this. Key on creating opportunities. Cedric, we mentioned integrated managed services. We can't be passive. We have to be active. Comments, feedback?
Thank you, Don. So good. We'll take feedback at the very end. Just really quick though, just as Don was talking about this, some of the big bets in market adjacencies, Don started to talk about a couple of those. So the core market team is working through kind of right now, in parallel, kind of what those look like. So we ultimately finish this. I would anticipate where it says core market big bets or market adjacencies, there might be a couple things that are very, very specific that begin to fill out there. We say, here's where we're going to go invest. We believe strongly that we need to go invest here. I would tell you as an organization, it was cool to hear Don Shoemaker talk about us as a market maker. Often we find ourselves in a role, I think, where we are taking what's given. And we've had places where we are in a market-making position, but how do we begin to shift the entire mentality to like a market-making view and not be just a maybe so-so kind of follower, but how do we begin to look ahead 5 years and recognize without this, we're going to miss opportunities and miss a chance to really scale and grow this business and serve our customers in a way, as you said, Don, will be critical to them going forward. So that's the market maker piece. We've got an encore with James here. Go ahead, sir. Our conflict makers. We'll find out. James and Ian.
Yeah.
Encore.
I told you I'd be back. I told you I'd be back.
Makers of two.
So confidence maker. So I have the absolute utmost confidence that my partner is going to go out and make markets. Great. Now what? Now we got to execute. We got to fulfill, right? And so this is really about driving confidence. And I think some of you have heard me talk about before. And when I think about a customer relationship, we can have all the greatest offerings in the world, but that might get them to say yes. But at some point, we have to execute. We have to deliver. And if we don't do that, we might get one order, we might get two orders, but we're not gonna get the third and the fourth order, right? We have to deliver. And so this is about creating confidence in the customer, the way we execute. So think about fulfillment. I will tell you, we had some other terms up here. I think we had fulfillment was in there. We had, I'm trying to think, none of them really kind of resonated and it didn't create any energy for me. I really like the confidence maker because it is about us building confidence for our customers. So when I think about the confidence and how we're going to do that, there's two pieces to that. So one is, I want to talk about where we've come from and where we have to go. So we are roughly 130 plus individual locations operating independently within geography and code. And we have variation in terms of the standards at which we do that. We have some variation in terms of the offerings we have to that market. And we have recognized that as we've grown, that was a great model for us. I mean, they gave a lot of autonomy, it allowed for some customization. But as we've grown bigger and bigger, we've come to the realization that we have to think more holistically. And if you think about it, even the customer has changed at the same time. So the customers used to be very localized, so you could build and make the investments in a market to support that market and those customers, and that worked great. Now our customers know no boundaries. They will go anywhere. And so it starts to change the dynamics of how we think about our infrastructure and how we're set up. And so this really starts to become about what I call catching up and then getting ahead. And so catching up is, we don't have any DCs. And if you think about some, from a supply chain strategy standpoint, you have to have some type of distribution center strategy. And that really is part of networks. Now, you can have a network strategy that doesn't necessarily include DC. So there's a little bit of both in terms of what you need there. You got to think about how am I going to serve bigger geographies. So where I have concentrations of inventory, how do I stretch the boundaries of where I can serve and I can leverage those assets and make sure that I'm making good decisions of that? Because we have a limitation. We have $750 million worth of inventory. And I think, we'd love to have more, but there's a limit to the amount of inventory that you have. So how do you utilize it in a more effective way? So you start building network strategies, and that includes the DC. And obviously we all know we're going to deliver a DC next year. And that's going to be a critical component going forward about how we're going to go to market, how we're going to serve those markets. Warehouse automation and optimization. So DC is naturally going to introduce that automation and that optimization. But we got to continue to look within the branches to say what else can we automate and optimize there. And I will tell you, we're not in a bad spot there. When I compare us to some others with the truck technology, the handheld technology, we're doing some good things there. But we got to continue to press on that and not just be complacent, but really get ahead. The second part, this is the other word we had in there was resiliency. Now, in the supply chain world, this is about resiliency. And we all know the story from COVID. It really exposed these long supply chains and the fragility of those supply chains. That if you had a geopolitical event, it could create a ripple effect that was pretty, of a magnitude we had never seen before. And so everybody's talking about how you build resiliency. And resiliency is part of having a network strategy, DCs, driving automation. It's really about how do we protect the customer. That when things happen downstream or upstream, how do we ensure we can still deliver a level of service to the customer? Because, those of us that are sat in front of the customer, we can say it's the vendor's fault. Do they care? They really don't. They place the order with us. And so we have to figure out how to build that resiliency that we can absorb those changes and those things. Manufacturers are moving their manufacturing facilities, right? They are looking at the world differently. And the global supply chain is starting to meet. There's some nationalization going on there. There's politics. There are all sorts of dynamics, labor costs. There's all sorts of dynamics. I think it's going to continue to create disruption for a long time. So how do we build resiliency for that? Because at the end of the day, the customer might matter to them, but when it comes to the work that they do, it really doesn't matter to them. So how are we going to serve them? So that's really what this confidence maker is about. It's the fundamentals, but it's also about how do we get ahead? How do we move forward? And we don't have to be on the leading edge, but how are we we act, as Jason said earlier, how do we act as leaders in our space when it comes to building that resilience? So this is the narrative. Give you guys a little bit of time. I will say we had safety in there, and we, you know, again, at the point in time that you guys provide some feedback, you know, even though as we thought about it, it was like safety wasn't a perfect fit, but it does go to, you know, what I say all the time, which is how you do anything is how you do everything. Safety is a key component. Today, probably more so than ever in my career, customers do pay attention to the way we perform on safety, because they believe the same thing. If you're not very good at safety, which by the way involves people, so either you don't care about people or you're just not very good. If you don't do that very well, how can I expect you to do anything else really well? So safety is still there, and it's at the top. You guys can provide feedback about if that's the right place or we'll put the right emphasis on it, but we won't take our foot off the pedal when it comes to safety. A lot of words there. I'm not gonna read this.
The one thing for me that this kind of hit for me, James, is all the stuff you talked about, you know, strategically, the investments we're making, how we're driving that resilient supply chain. The narrative to me begins to speak to the people who are doing the work and the criticality of the work they do in creating confidence. It doesn't just happen. It's all the system, and it's the work they do in the system, and really getting our logistics folks in a place where they see themselves as a really key element in why customers want to choose us. It absolutely is the case, and sometimes they get stuck in they got a lot of stuff going on. You walk through a warehouse, you talk to folks, and they're buried in boxes and stuff going on, and this is attempting to elevate kind of the work they're doing, how they think about the work with a lot of purpose. You know, what they do creates confidence for the customer. If they don't have confidence, doesn't matter how much we're doing to go make the market. Without confidence, they're going to choose somebody else. It's a pretty big deal.
And this, you know, this also emphasizes, which we've been talking about, is the criticality of the collaboration between, you know, Don's organization and my organization. Because you can't do those two things in a silo. And it does kind of drive around building that confidence, is having the understanding and awareness of, you know, what Steve's trying to do in a market, and then what are we doing as a team to support him, how important that is. And, you know, we're making great progress on that. I mean, I feel like, you know, over the last 18 months, we have really kind of moved the needle in this. But there's a lot more work to be done. And I think we all know we've got some spots where we haven't made as much progress. So I think that, to Jason's point, it drives some attention to that fulfillment piece and how critical and how important it is. And I think we've seen it in some markets where, you know, we just manage the cost, but we haven't been able to expand our service. And that's created a limitation of our ability to grow in those markets. So,
Thank you.
you won't see me.
All right. Let's hit the page for the moment anyways. Jeremy, fresh off elk hunting, just rolling in here this morning, ready to roll, so. Oh, get it right.
So, do good. One of our big objectives in our strategy today was there based off of the belief that people, and those people are future employee owners, our employee owners of today. Those people are businesses, that's our customers, our vendors. They have a belief that corporations don't just take whatever they want without any consequence to the world around them. And so we put that do good into our strategy. And I want to thank the LC specifically for calling that out as, when you kind of first saw our initial draft of some of the things that we were working on for our next iteration of strategy, you all called that out to say, this is really meaningful to those people. That's the customers, that's the vendors, and really when I think about it, when I think about people and do good, it's the employee owners. We've heard a lot of feedback from our own employee owners that it feels good to be associated with an organization that cares about the community around them, that cares about others. So again, thank you for getting that pack in here. There's probably not a significant change to do good, but it's based off of that core belief. That core belief that companies aren't there just to operate and just to provide a return to the shareholders. They have to still be a good corporate citizen and do good in the communities in which they work. Flip to the narrative, that I think comes across, real clear in here. Where I want us to focus on is leaving that world better than where we found it. I think that's connecting a lot with our employee owners. I think it's connecting with our vendor partners. It's connecting with our customers.
Nice job. Thank you, Jeremy.
Arlo, are you not gonna have to dance?
I don't think so, but it doesn't mean I won't dance.
Don wants to dance to Jeremy's takeaway from that. All right, when I think about this, I wouldn't say this necessarily on stage, communicating this, but in the world we're in today, this is more important than ever. As a business, we've got an opportunity, I'll say a responsibility, to be a voice of reason and to be a place where we can provide, I think, guidance and support in ways that are really critical to communities at a state level, a federal level, and more than ever with maybe the lack of reasonability out there just broadly in the world. I think we've got a really important role to play here in doing good and making an impact and helping shape things around us. All of you are extensions of that. Your individual thing that you do as leaders, I'll say as broadly employee owners, whether it's in your church, in a school, whatever it is, the events that you're involved in, those are opportunities, those are moments to make an impact. And so that's what doing good is about. Last but not least, Ellie. Yeah.
Okay, unleash owner potential. Border States has an amazing legacy of investing in their people. We talked about at the beginning, having a great culture. The other piece I always love that Tom shared with me about the ownership essentials, that wasn't what we said about ourselves. That's what customers said about us. That's so important. It is so important. And so I think the compelling part about how I want to talk about this space now, it's a little provocative, and it's that last statement. We want to be the best. We want to be the best place to work. We want to be the best place to turn over your family business that you've spent years building. We want to be the best place that if you are looking at where to build your career, where that should be, that there's no other choice, it's us. And so that's maybe a little more aggressive, a little more provocative than we've been in the past, but that is really what we're striving for. And we want to be the best every day in terms of our interactions with each other and with customers and vendors. And that doesn't come without some intentionality. And so we talk about our value proposition, and that is what commitment are we making to people as they join us in this journey, right? We do a good job of talking about employee ownership, and East Oktoberfest is coming up, and we will have a whole month dedicated to talking about that. And it is very compelling. But it's not the only thing, right? There's other things that are important to people. Do good. That is a perfect example of all of you saying, wait a minute, there's another piece that people have told us, that our employee owners have told us, that customers, vendors have told us, is important in terms of the value proposition. What about having a compelling work? Having a purpose? Enjoying the work that you do? Enjoying the people you work with? We're going to spend some time telling our story. What is the employee owner experience? And what is the employment brand that we want to put out there? We have a great story to tell. Let's tell it. And so that's a little bit about the value proposition and being a little bit more overt about that. The learning space, again, I think we know that that is super important. And you'll see as we talk about the culture assessment, that is important to people in terms of how we are developing and how we're helping people reach their potential. I think the other part is how do we shorten people's learning curve? So that's what role-based learning is about. How do you help me be successful in my day job and as soon as possible? And it doesn't necessarily, I get the components of it without necessarily being 100% reliant on the person next to me and how they do things, right? What are those high standards we want to set? And then how do we then bring the learning to life to help people shorten that learning curve and be, effective as soon as possible? So again, a lot of effort around role-based learning. Talent pipeline optimization. We may need to reword that because I have my husband in my brain saying, real people don't talk like that. So that may need some work. But what we're talking about there is, we talk about the talent shortage out there, and we talk about the growth. Did you hear Jason talk about the growth in a short amount of time? We need people to be able to fuel that growth. And so how do we, we talk about talent management, we talked about succession planning. How do we have the right people in the right place at the right time to be able to fuel this? As well as, again, compelling people from outside the organization to know who is border states. Why would I want to work there? People have choices. We, as we said earlier, want to be the clear choice. And so that's a little bit of that optimization. It's the external view and it's also the internal view of that. The talent development, again, we want to continue. We've done some really great visible work, and I think our employee owners have appreciated that. The work is not done. We will tell you there are gaps that we want to close. And so that is what that is about. The sales coaching. We went through an amazing effort around the operating model. And there are people in new roles that didn't exist before. And I would argue if we don't have the sales organization and the ability to coach our sales individuals and our account managers running on all cylinders, it won't work, right? There's a lot of things that won't work if we don't invest heavily in our sales leaders. And so really excited as we embark on that journey to be, again, more intentional about, it's one thing to be a great salesperson, it's another thing to coach others to do it. Really different skill set, and I think many of you learned that over your career. Total rewards architecture, again, may need to revert that, because maybe real people don't talk like that. We want to make sure that, again, as you think about that concept of pay transparency and what is the value of jobs, the expectation is that people understand what their career path is, what the value of those jobs are, and what that brings, again, to their, to the overall value proposition. And so we've got a little bit of work to do that with there. It's not unique to a company that has grown as fast as we've grown. And again, the external world, transparency, that's what people expect right now. That's what people expect. And so we need to live up to that expectation, and there's some work associated with doing that. And the next part is important. Be the best, right? Be the best. That's where we want to be. People have choices, and we want to be the choice that people